Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a really interesting stack of documents today, and honestly, it all centers on this rumor I've been hearing a lot lately.
Yeah.
It's just popping up everywhere, travel forums, you see it in the comments, on expat blogs, even in some pretty optimistic financial headlines.
You're talking about the bargain narrative.
Exactly. The rumor that Hong Kong, the city that's always been this financial fortress of Asia, the place where bank accounts go to die, is suddenly cheaper.
It is a very tempting idea, isn't it? I mean, you see a headline about property slump or a shifting economy, and your brain just immediately jumps to, oh, is this my window?
Right.
Is this the moment I can swoop in and live like a king on a budget?
Yeah, exactly.
You see a little dip in an index, and you just assume that's going to translate to your grocery bill or something.
Right.
So our mission today is to really test that rumor.
Right.
We're ripping apart a breakdown titled, Hong Kong Looks Cheaper. Here's Why It Isn't. We're going to look past the sticker prices and analyze the real cost of living.
We're talking everything from, the price of a square foot of drywall to the price of a head of lettuce.
And we should be really clear about who we're doing this for. This isn't really for the tourist who's coming for like a 3-day weekend.
Oh, no.
This is for the learner, that professional thinking about relocating, or maybe an investor trying to understand the efficiency of the city.
Yeah.
The big question really is Hong Kong a financial opportunity right now? Or is it a financial trap?
Because the short answer to, is it cheaper, seems to be a pretty firm no.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing the long answer is where the real headache is.
The long answer is incredibly complex.
Hmm.
And that is, where all the nuance lives.
Okay, so let's start with the anchor. The one thing that just drags every other financial decision down in that city, housing.
Oh, housing, yeah.
I was looking at the data in our source material, and there's one specific metric that just stopped me cold. I actually had to reread it to make sure I wasn't, looking at a typo.
You're talking about the affordability ratio.
It's the 21 years statistic. You have to walk us through this because it sounds completely impossible.
I wish it were a typo. I really do. The source data highlights a comparison of how long it takes a skilled worker. And we're not talking about some entry-level intern here. We're talking a skilled professional.
Right.
To afford a typical, pretty modest 650 square foot apartment.
Okay. Which, let's be honest, 650 square feet is not a mansion.
Not at all.
That's a compact one bedroom in most parts of the world. In the Midwest, that's a garage.
In Hong Kong, that is a luxury.
Yeah.
But to buy that luxury, the data shows it takes 21 years of total income.
Okay, hold on. When we say total income, are we saying if they spent $0 on food or taxes or transport, just 100% of their salary funneled into the house?
Correct. It's a theoretical limit.
Yeah.
It's just used to measure the difficulty.
Wow.
And to really understand how wild that number is, you have to compare it to the other cities we usually complain about. You know the list. New York, Tokyo, Tel Aviv.
Right. If you live in Manhattan, you think you have it the worst. You complain about it at brunch constantly.
What you really, really don't have at the worst. In New York, Tokyo, and Tel Aviv, that same metric is about 11 years.
So Hong Kong is essentially double the difficulty setting of New York City.
Almost exactly double.
Yeah.
And even Singapore, which is, the constant rival to Hong Kong, is sitting at around 12 years. London's at 14. Paris is 15.
Wow.
So Hong Kong isn't just leading the pack. It's in a completely different statistical universe.
That just blows my mind because we hear these headlines about prices softening in Hong Kong real estate. But if you drop a number from astronomical to slightly less astronomical, it's still out of reach for like 99% of people.
Precisely. And this is the real danger of that cheaper rumor. The starting point was so stratospheric that a 10% or even 15% dip doesn't actually change the affordability for a normal professional.
So, okay, what does that do to the mindset of someone who's moving there? If you know you can't buy, you have to rent, and you know you're just throwing money into a black hole.
It changes the entire texture of your financial life. The source explicitly mentions that the dream of homeownership just feels non-existent there. So you rent, and that rent is going to eat up a massive percentage of your monthly salary. It's not uncommon for 40%, even 50% of your income to go straight to a landlord.
Which leaves less room for savings, less room for travel, less room for any mistakes.
And we haven't even talked about the hidden costs of that housing. The source makes a really big point of this. You sign the lease, you pay the deposit, but then bam, you get hit with the management fees.
Are those significantly higher than elsewhere?
In Hong Kong, oh yes, you're paying for the security, the lobby, the maintenance of these, high-density towers. And then there's the climate control. you're running an air conditioner for 9, maybe 10 months out of the year.
Right, because of the humidity. It's not just about temperature, it's about like mold prevention.
Exactly. So your utility bill is hefty. And then there's the furnishing issue. This is a trap so many expats fall into. They arrive, they rent an empty box, and they realize that furnishing an apartment in Hong Kong, if you're buying new, is just shockingly expensive.
Oh, and the logistics of getting a sofa up a service elevator, it's a nightmare.
Oh, nightmare.
This actually brings up a really interesting strategic point for you if you're listening and maybe planning a move or a long-term assignment. If buying is impossible and renting an empty flat comes with these huge sunk costs for furniture, you might only use for a couple of years. What's the actual smart play here?
You have to look at asset-light living. You want to avoid owning things that are hard to move or sell. And this is why the service apartment sector is so huge in Hong Kong. We actually looked at companies like MoveAndStay.com as part of this research because they addressed this exact friction.
Right. They aren't just a booking site. They're specifically for extended stays.
Exactly. They've been at this for over 25 years, focusing on corporate teams, professionals. And the math often works out better because you bypass all those setup costs. You aren't arguing with an internet provider on day one.
You aren't buying a bed frame you have to sell for pennies when you leave.
Exactly. For a professional on, say, a 2-year contract, that flexibility is worth a premium. If you use a service like that to find a serviced apartment or office, you're essentially just outsourcing the headache.
And in a city as stressful as Hong Kong, paying to remove stress is usually a good investment.
A very good investment.
Okay, so we've established that the roof over your head is going to cost you a fortune, one way or another. Let's move to the rest of your life. The daily wallet, because this is where the source material got a little schizophrenic.
That is the perfect word for it. It really is a tale of two economies.
The source laid out some monthly estimates for a comfortable life. And again, this excludes the housing stress we just talked about. For a single person, they estimated about HK $44,000.
Yeah.
For a family of 4, roughly HK $64,000.
Which, depending on your exchange rate, is a significant chunk of change.
A huge chunk. So where is that money going? Because I've heard the rumors that you can eat for cheap.
You can, but you can also go broke at the grocery store. This is the tale of two dinners. Hong Kong imports almost everything. It produces very, very little of its own food. So if you move there and you insist on eating like you're still in London or Chicago, you're buying imported cheddar, specific brands of cereal, Australian beef Huber. Your grocery bill will make your eyes water.
How much are we talking?
We're talking HK $4,000 to HK $8,000 a month for a couple, just on groceries.
Just to put food in the fridge? That's wild.
Right. But if you pivot your lifestyle, if you stop cooking Western food at home and start eating out at the local slots, it completely flips.
This is the Cha Chan Teng factor.
Exactly. At the local tea cafes, you can get a massive plate of food pork, chopped rice, noodles, and a milk tea for like HK $50 or HK $60. You need to have a great dinner for HK $300. But if you walk 2 blocks over to a French bistro or some pseudo-New York steakhouse, you're paying HK $1,000 immediately.
So the learner has to adapt their palate to save their wallet. You can't just import your old life into Hong Kong without paying a massive tariff.
Importing your old life is the most expensive thing you can possibly do in Hong Kong. You have to live locally to find the value.
Now, there was a specific tip in the source about the mechanics of paying for things. I think people imagine Hong Kong as this cyberpunk city where you pay with a retina scan or crypto, but the reality is paper.
Yes, cash is still king in very specific, very non-negotiable areas. The red taxis, cash.
Yeah.
The wet markets where you get the cheap produce, cash.
So you still need a pocket full of coins.
You do. But we have to talk about the flip side of this. The single greatest piece of financial infrastructure in the city, the octopus card.
The source called this a game changer. I'm always skeptical of that term, but in this case, it really seems warranted.
It is. I mean, you have to remember, Hong Kong launched this contactless smart card decades before Apple Pay or contactless credit cards were a thing in the West.
It's not just the subway card, right? Because I have a subway card in my pocket right now, and it doesn't do anything but open a turnstile.
No, calling the octopus card a subway card is an insult. It's a lifestyle key.
Yeah.
You use it to get on the train, yes, but then you tap it at 7-Eleven to buy a drink. You tap it at the vending machine. You tap it at the supermarket.
Wow.
You can even use it to access your apartment building or office in some cases. It just creates this frictionless flow through the city.
And that flow connects to the one area where the Hong Kong is cheap. Rumor is actually 100% true. Transportation.
This is the saving grace. This is the balloon that lifts you up while the rent is dragging you down.
So if you're used to the London Underground zoning prices or the, let's say, variable reliability of the New York subway, what is the Hong Kong experience?
It's a revelation. The MTR is spotless, it's aggressively air-conditioned, it runs every 2 minutes, and it costs pennies.
Okay, give us the numbers. How cheap is cheap?
You're looking at maybe HK $500 to HK $1,000 a month for a travel pass or just heavy daily usage. That is a fraction of a commuting budget in London or DC.
A tiny fraction.
And it's not just the subway. You have the ferries connecting the islands, which are incredibly cheap, and you have the ding ding.
I love that name. The trams on Hong Kong Island, why do they call it that?
It's the sound of the double bell they use to warn pedestrians. They're these tall, thin, double-decker trams. They were slow, they don't have AC, but they cost practically nothing, around HK $3 a ride.
$3.
You can ride from one end of the island to the other for the price of a gumball. It's the best sightseeing tour in the world.
So when you balance the budget, you're hemorrhaging money on rent, but you're saving a fortune just getting around.
Correct. And that efficiency, that ability to move cheaply and quickly, unlocks the other free perk that people forget about, the nature.
I think this is the biggest misconception. If you haven't been there, you just imagine Hong Kong is Blade Runner. You know, neon, rain, concrete, and smoke.
It's the visual definition of the city for outsiders. But the reality is that 40% of Hong Kong territory is protected country park. You're never more than 20 minutes away from a trail.
The source mentioned the Dragon's Back. That sounds like a fantasy novel location.
It's iconic. You take a cheap bus ride to the trailhead, and suddenly you're hiking along a spiral ridge, looking down at the South China Sea on one side and the skyscrapers on the other. It costs $0.
And the islands, Lama, Chongqiao, these aren't just parks, they're communities.
They're fully different worlds. Lamb Island has no cars. It has this very bohemian, kind of hippie vibe. You take a ferry for a few dollars, buy cheap beer from a convenience store, and just sit on a beach.
That's a powerful quality of life argument. You might live in a shoebox apartment, but your living room is the ocean.
That's the trade-off. You outsource your relaxation. You don't relax on your sofa. You don't have room for a sofa. You relax on a mountain peak or a ferry deck. If you're a homebody, Hong Kong is a terrible deal. If you're an explorer, it's a great deal.
Let's talk about the culture for a second, because you aren't just moving to a spreadsheet, you're moving to a living city. The source talked about this old meets new contrast.
It's the friction that makes the city so interesting. You have the high-tech octopus card and the glass towers in Central. But then you turn a corner into Sheungwan or Western District, and you're smelling incense from a temple or, dried scallops from a traditional medicine shop.
The source explicitly warned against staying in the tourist traps if you want to understand the city. They recommended Sham Shui Po.
Sham Shui Po is fantastic. It's gritty, it's loud, it's where you go to buy electronic components, fabrics, cheap toys. It has an energy that feels very old Hong Kong. It's not polished. It's not polished. And that's the point. It's authentic.
And for a total change of pace, they mentioned Sai Kung.
The back garden of Hong Kong. It's way out in the new territories. It's coastal, lots of stray dogs, lots of seafood restaurants where you pick your fish right out of a tank. It feels like a lazy fishing village, but it's still connected to the city.
And we can't skip the food recommendations. The source was adamant about roast duck and dim sum. But it wasn't just about the taste, was it?
No. It's about the ritual. Dim sum isn't just breakfast. It's a contact sport.
A contact sport.
It's loud. You're sharing tables. You're shouting to be heard over the clatter of dishes. If you move to Hong Kong and you don't embrace the chaos of a Sunday dim sum, you are missing the heartbeat of the place. It's where the community happens.
Okay, so we have the expensive housing, the cheap transport, the expensive cheese, the cheap street food, and the free hiking. Let's circle all the way back to the original question, the mission of this deep dive. The headline says Hong Kong is cheaper. Is it true?
If I have to give a binary answer, no.
It's a hard no?
It's a no, with a big asterisk.
Right.
It is not cheaper because housing is the anchor. It doesn't matter if your subway ride is $1, if your rent is 50% of your income. That price-to-income ratio, that 21 years to buy a home, that's the defining struggle. It dictates your savings, your retirement date, your anxiety levels.
So the cheaper narrative is just looking at surface metrics.
It's looking at luxury goods or maybe tax rates. And taxes are low, yes. But the cost of living, specifically the cost of space, eats up that tax benefit for most people.
But, and here's the big but, people still go. It is still a magnet for talent. Why? If the math is so bad, why does it work?
Because of the intensity, the efficiency, There are very few places on Earth where you can close a multi-million-dollar deal in a boardroom at 4:00 p.m., hop in a cab, and be hiking a tropical trail by 4:45 p.m.
You pay for the density of experience.
You do. It accelerates your career. It exposes you to the Asian market. It's thrilling, but you have to view it as a premium product. It is not a budget option.
So if you were that learner listening to this and you're getting ready to pack your bags, what is the final strategy?
The strategy is specialized budgeting. You cannot budget like you're in the Midwest or Berlin. You budget near zero for a car. You don't need one. You budget aggressively for rent, and you budget strategically for dining. You have to mix the high and the low.
And maybe consider that asset-light approach we mentioned earlier. Don't buy furniture if you don't have to.
Absolutely. Whether it's finding a place through move-in stay or just renting a furnished flat, flexibility is your best asset in a volatile, expensive market.
I want to leave the listeners with a thought you touched on earlier. We talked about that 21-year housing metric. You mentioned something about the soul of the city.
Yes. This is the provocative thought I really want people to sit with. We look at cities like Hong Kong as economic engines. We look at the GDP. But what happens to the soul of a city when its own skilled workers, the teachers, the nurses, the mid-level managers, the artists, are priced out of ownership for 2 decades?
They become a transient population.
Exactly. If you can't put down roots, you treat the city like a hotel, a very exciting, very expensive hotel. You check in, you work hard, you have fun, and then you check out.
And a hotel doesn't have a community.
Not a deep one.
Yeah.
So if that 21-year number doesn't come down, does Hong Kong lose its authenticity? Does it just become a transit lounge for global capital? That's the real cost of living that doesn't show up on any receipt.
That is a heavy but vital question to end on. It's not just about the cost of living, it's about the cost of belonging.
Perfectly put.
Thank you for unpacking this with us. It's a complex city, but hopefully we've made the math and the trade-offs a little clearer.
Always a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone listening to this deep dive. Whether you're packing your bags for the fragrant harbor or just dreaming about it, keep asking the hard questions about what things really cost. We'll see you next time.